Hey everyone, welcome back. We return with an actually edited video. Today I'm going to show you how to reach 200 KPM on any frame in the game. Now, there is a caveat. You do need to pick the right tiles for this to work. However, it is possible to actually reach 200 KPM doing this. If you aren't familiar with tile pathing, then it is much more likely you'll hover around 180 KPM, and if you for some reason pick a bad tile, it's still about 150 to 160 KPM. For whether or not this is actually fun, well, I'll leave that for you to decide. So you've seen me showcase some setups for run and gun melee influence nukes. Today, we're instead looking at a camping strat that just absolutely nukes the map. There's a fair bit of theory going on here, so strap yourself in. Luckily, the actual builds are incredibly easy to play as compensation, so let's get into it. I previously showed how Melee Influence can trigger Exodia Force repeatedly for absurd amounts of AoE damage. Also, no, Fangs of Rakta cannot taxi slash procs into Melee Influence. I also showed how it can turn Glaives into tactical nukes by massively increasing their range and hitting through walls. Now, we look at how to use Melee Influence to spread damage from Invincible targets. It's that simple. Invincible enemies, due to Well of Life, Blood Altar, Gaze, Parasitic Link, etc. still take actual damage. It's just stored and nullified until the abilities expire. This is important because since you're still actually dealing damage, then this means you can activate Melee Influence. For today's build, I've chosen to prioritize Blood Altar because it allows you to health tank easily, and you can have multiples of them active. Do keep in mind Well of Life makes you status immune also. However, I don't like how it lifts enemies off the floor since we're playing a melee setup. All of the status procs you deal to this invincible enemy will also be spread within 20 meters once you activate Influence with a melee electric proc, a punching bag that spreads death. To scale our damage, we need Armor Strip. This can be sourced from Daggers and Argonak if your invincible enemy does not have an innate armor strip aura like Xaku's Gaze. Melee Influence carries the melee type trait, meaning using a dagger will cause influence to spread dagger damage. Amalgam Argonak Metal Auger can strip armor on all dagger damage, be it direct hits, dots, or in this case, transferred hits. Since we need to use electric to activate influence anyways, the chaining electric procs in the 20 meter AoE will also cross-chain enemies to induce quadratic scaling armor strip and DPS. This results in rapid death before enemies can get anywhere close to you. I normally end up placing the Blood Altar behind objects or wall, but technically you can camp in the open if you think the heal is strong enough. Thus, by hitting your invincible punching bag, you convert electric and other procs into AoE damage that is also capable of armor stripping. Do note that Melee Influence can only spread elemental procs and does not spread IPS, aka you cannot use this to spread slash. While the concept is simple, modding becomes awkward due to elemental restrictions for Melee Influence spreading. I'm using a Nautilus with Cord and Manifold tech to aggressively pull enemies towards me. This results in faster kills, resulting in faster respawns, resulting in higher KPM. I do not want to use gas, because gas has a side effect of leaving behind clouds when enemies die. These clouds will continue to armor strip new enemies dragged in. Because clouds can easily be stacked together, gas dagger setups today result in enemies dying at the edge instantly before you can apply 3 unique status effects to activate Manifold Bond. Therefore, our main DPS element of choice shall be electric. Electric does not persist after death, meaning enemies entering our 20 meters melee influence death zone have to have brand new electric procs applied or chained to them by still surviving enemies. This gives time for me to proc viral and radiation as well to satisfy Manifold Bond requirements. This gives us all the requirements needed to achieve 200 KPM on any frame. You need to have an ability that makes an enemy invincible and can take damage still. You need a way to armor strip through walls, be it an ability or via Argonak daggers, and you need to have at least 3 elemental types that are not IPS present on your melee setup. The easiest would be Radiation, Viral, and Electric. I'm gonna go over our weapon choices before frames, since it's a lot easier to understand if I explain our weapon choices first. If your frame of choice has no way to imbue secondary elements, then you will either have to use a dagger with innate secondary elements, like Rakta's Dark Dagger's Radiation, or you will have to equip the new melee mod Focus Radon from the Whispers of Wall content, which directly adds a combined radiation element that does not interact with heat or electric mods unless you bring both. For example, while Rumblejack is my tool for today, since Innate Electric is not a secondary element, I still have to mod Focus Radon on with 60/60 Cold and Toxin mods. I would recommend Rumblejack or Rakta if your frame cannot source extra elements, because these two daggers save a mod slot so that you can have proper crit and status scaling as well as enough attack speed. Rakta would use the exact same build, but just swap Focus Radon for an electric mod. Daggers with no innate elements will have to give up attack speed and can feel bad to use. At the very least, all Warframe builds today will have a spare slot for Arcane Strike. If you do have access to Armor Strip from abilities, then note that non-elemental melees will have to dedicate 4 elemental slots to equip Viral, Electric, and Focus Radon for Radiation. Pick a fast melee in that case, since you won't have space for attack speed mods. Now, I used as an alternative melee that was on Rumblejack or Rakta a modified version of my Zaw from my previous video to demonstrate a non-dagger build. Remember to bring an Argonak if you're using a dagger, with Amalgam, Metal, Augur. Amalgam Serration can't hurt for some bonus sprint speed, and Dexterity for combo duration. Now, you don't even need a weapon to kill Acolytes, since this setup also instantly shreds off their shields, armor, and then health. Focus School is quite free too, so I chose Madarai for faster casting speed, but that can be easily compensated by Archon Shards. Now let's look at our roster of 4 example frames today. My favorite of the bunch, Citrine, makes her entrance first. Citrine is particularly fun with this, because she has the only ability in the game that allows you to apply multiple status effects through walls constantly, without you actually having to be there. While her Prismatic gem will not tag enemies until you hit them yourself, Melee Influence allows you to trigger the gem through walls within 20 meters. You want to ensure the gem radius is larger than 20 meters, because this guarantees that any enemy hit by Melee Influence will start getting tagged by Prismatic gem's Heat, Toxin, Cold, and Electric procs immediately. This maximizes your odds of having 3 status effects on them before they die. Otherwise, you just want higher duration so that your gem and Blood Altar last a comfortably long time. 46.5 and 31 seconds respectively. Strength and duration also buff the status chance and status duration of your weapons, allowing your dagger to proc electric much more consistently due to Melee Influence's only 20% activation rate to get the 18 seconds buff. The procs, though, will basically last forever, guaranteeing death. Arcane Blessing and Adaptation for health tanking. Now our second frame is Oberon, and the reason why I chose him, well, when was the last time you saw a 200 KPM Oberon? Exactly. That's why I picked him. He also brings Smite Infusion, which grants us that coveted pre-combined secondary element, without needing the Focus Radon new mod from Whispers in the Wall content. This lets you mod Viral and Electric with just 3 slots, and you do not need to build range, and also you do not want to build too much strength, because Smite's radiation buff scales with it. Too much strength messes up elemental weighting and prevents Viral and Electric from proccing properly. Naturally, we want Viral to be the highest weight from 60/60s for 120%, because it is the most harmless status effect, but also once it procs, buffs further damage. We don't need any range at all, since our melee itself can already get Viral, Radiation, and Electric, and therefore I built for absolute maximum duration, so that our Blood Altar lasts 61 seconds. You might as well cast your Tiny Carpet and stand on it to cast your 3, so that you can permanently activate your health regen. Arcane Blessing and Adaptation, again, for health tanking. Our third build today comes from Xaku. Xaku is special because they exclusively have an invincibility tool for enemies, as well as an armor strip tool, and even better, it is the same ability, Gaze. This means Xaku does not need to use a dagger to do today's setup. Pick whatever you want. The Zaw I showed earlier in the video is just a template for any generic melee weapon. Xaku also has the advantage of not needing to grab new enemies to Blood Altar, removing the awkward reset downtime between rotations. You can forever freeze the Gaze timer by recasting Vasan time whenever it runs low. This also means I have a free helmet slot, so I chose Greedy Pole. This lets me camp a single spot and drag all the loot to me after I get some kills. I also want Gaze to have smaller than 20 meters radius. This guarantees enemies entering my melee influence 20 meter kill zone will survive the initial status procs and maximize odds of having Viral, Electric, and Radiation before dying when stepping within my 16.7 meters 100% defense strip Gaze aura. The Relentless Loss Augment allows me to easily reach 200 strength in a single slot with Madarai's Link Strength. However, if this augment is too clunky for you to use, then feel free to use Blind Rage rank 7 plus Madarai instead. Duration grants Gaze a 35 seconds initial duration and a 63 seconds freeze timer from Vasan time. Once more, Arcane Blessing and Adaptation for health tanking. Our last showcase frame today is, well, of course, Saryn. She can already do run and gun melee influence setups. However, I also wanted to demonstrate just how she absolutely destroys here as well. Toxin Lash grants separate hits and forced toxin procs, whereas Venom Dose grants corrosive damage and waiting for corrosive procs. She already has 2 of 3 desired elements to activate Manifold Bond via taxing and cross melee influence. Range again is unnecessary since none of her abilities are used for AoE and are instead buffs on ourselves, and her duration is sky high to maximize quality of life at over 2-minute Venom Dose and Toxin Lash buffs and a 61 seconds Blood Alter. This time, we have space for Vitality, so you don't need to use Arcane Blessing. The second slot is flex for whatever you want, and Arcane Guardian could be helpful for tanking with adaptation. Now if you get a status effect, just cast Molt, as it cleanses that as well. Saryn is probably tied with Citrine for the strongest on the setup, and is even easier to use since her buffs just stick to you instead of needing to place them. Nautilus is the same for every setup today. This is a stock Nautilus build and is not special. Remember that mod hierarchy exists and important precepts should always be in top row and towards the left. The elemental buffs or tools we mentioned today will be used to ensure melee influence can pass on the 3 status effects needed to repeatedly activate Manifold Bond. This allows our Nautilus to spam Cordon. Reinforced Bond can be used for shield regen tech on sentinels, but this really shouldn't be needed since most enemies are dying through walls or far away. Also, as of the time of this video, Tenacious Bond is currently bugged and shows on the UI but does not add any crit damage to your weapons. Hopefully DE fixes this soon. Now, every single build I show today plays the same. You find an enemy, cast Blood Alter on them in a good spot for sucking with Cordon, or in the case of Xaku, Gaze, or well, etc. for frames like Nidus Parasitic Link. Then, if there are important support abilities to add statuses, like Citrine's Gem, Oberon's Smite Infusion, Saryn's Venom Dose, and or Toxin Lash, then cast them. Then, just spam melee on the enemy until Blood Alter resets. Bonus points for Xaku being able to just recast Vass on time, and never needing a new enemy. Cheers! If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as soon as possible, like I've done with the Whispers in the Wall update. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. You won't miss out on any of that, do you? And that'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.